Jim, I got it. Okay. And I know George. Jacqueline, tell me something about who you are.
Well, I am Jacqueline Fiore. I am an industrial organizational psychologist. I've been in the work since 2013. I mainly work in the employee engagement space.
Okay. And how long have you been part of the network?
Gosh, great question. I think 2014, is when I joined.
Okay.
I could be off.
Okay, that's good. And Jim Snow, you're muted. And now you're not muted.
Unmuted. Yes. No, I've been with the network since I think 2014.
Okay.
For such a matter, I left and recently came back, and yeah.
Okay, so I have a group of people here, and at all levels. I mean, George has been part of the network since, let me see, the Civil War ended somewhere in the mid 1800s. And so shortly after that, George joined the network, which was about a year or two before I did.
Yeah.
And then Tom's been here a long time too. Mike's relatively, well, Mike, I guess you're 5-6 years now, right? Okay. And so because I never know whether I'm going to have brand new people, whatever, when I'm doing something like this. So what Wendy asked me to do was talk about the concept of discovering wants and needs. And because I've got some very experienced people here on the call, this can be a discussion and anybody can jump in and say something. And we can, and Zoom sometimes is difficult, but either raise your hand or kind of let me know that you have something to say. And we don't have to make it to, say in the chat or just, say, hey, I got something I want to say, and hold your hand up and we'll do that. But unfortunately with Zoom, it's only one person can talk at a time. So it gets tough. When I was thinking about what to do with this, my first thought went to the sales process. This isn't going to be, oh my God, I never thought of that. But yet for me, number 3 in the sales process is discovering wants and needs. And obviously just a bit of review. Number 1 is introduction. Number 2 is getting favorable attention. And then 3 is discovering wants and needs. And so what I begin with is nobody can argue that the more I can get information on discovering wants and needs, the better somebody likes me. The better somebody likes me, the more in depth I can question. And so that's why I've always said the 2 and 3 in the sales process are totally dependent one on the other. And so that I got a number of thoughts written down, is that you only get high if your intent is to get hired, where somebody engages you for a process, your intent to get hired is you fill a need. And so if you can discover the need that you fill, you raise your chances of getting hired. If you haven't gotten hired, it's because you haven't discovered a need. Now, I know this sounds so obvious, but I'll speak to people and say, how'd it go? Oh, we had a great meeting. It's wonderful. Gee, did you get hired? Did you get moved along? Oh, no, but it was a great meeting. Well, what that tells me is that person did not do a decent job of discovering wants and needs. They may have thought they did, had a lovely discussion, but when they didn't get hired, didn't work. That's the way it goes. Now, I always begin each meeting. Well, let me ask a question. Who would like to volunteer how they begin a meeting with somebody? And I'll take any comment that anybody wants to make, because this can go in a few different directions.
Well, Arnie, I'll start for you. Starts right out of the book with the introduction. Know the person's name, know how to pronounce it, smile at them, get them to smile, and on to step 2.
Okay, that's introduction. Now we're getting to gain favorable attention and or discovery wants and needs. I mean, so whichever you want to go. And either we can keep going with you, Tom, or somebody else can jump in.
No one jumping in. What I do is, my friend, Mr. Brown, told me, give him a quick background, Leonard, of what you've done. So I do that in about 3 minutes and say, but enough about me. Tell me what your key goal is.
Okay.
Now we're on to step 3. So I'm going to stop there. It's that simple for me.
Well, hang on. And Doug and I have had this argument now going on 26 years. That and if you do it in three minutes, if Doug hasn't changed anything, he does it in 22 minutes. So he spends an inordinate amount of time. No, that's not fair. In his world, it works for him. I tend to spend, if you spend 3 minutes, I spend about 30 seconds in background, because I always have a point of view that my mother was very interested in me, God rest her soul. Okay. But I've discovered nobody else is very interested in me. They're interested in them. And so for me, it's whatever feels comfortable, but for me, it's never more than a very short time. And then my next question is, how can I help? That's kind of how I kind of begin every meeting. Now, let me back up a little bit. I want to do as much as I can, either before I've met because what we haven't done is set the meeting up. How did it come? Was it a call? Was it a referral call? Did I meet somebody somewhere? Is it a cold call? But number one, you can only sell a prospect. So my next question is simple question. What's a prospect? Anybody? Mike, what's a prospect?
So for me, it's anybody that has a need that I can fill.
That's one. What else?
I think that covers it all, Arnie. Because
No,
you're going to say
well,
they have to be able to pay.
That's two. They got to
can't
be
pay
able
me
to,
if I can't fill it if they can't pay me. So it's all buried in the first one.
right?
They have
Number
to be
one, they have to
willing-
have it. They have to have a need. They have to be able to
Yeah.
pay you. What's the third?
Well, they have to have the decision authority, but that's
No, hang on. But that's it. And you may qualify in different ways or whatever, but that's it. Now, it doesn't mean if somebody, I'm going to throw them out if I discover they have no money, because nobody has any money most of the time, or they lie to me and tell me they're a decision maker. And so it's okay. But I have to have some idea that the person in front of me
Mhm.
does qualify as a prospect. So then, and I'm really anxious, not anxious, I'm expecting them to say, well, what do you mean when I say, how can I help? And it will obviously always, nobody says, oh, you can't help me at all. I'll get some kind of a, what do you mean? And that's when I might say, well, based on, gee, I mean, I may make an observation. You have a nice office. It looks very nice. I may have done some research ahead of time, and I may say something. But then I'll say, what's up? And I want to do it without a focus. I want them to create the focus. Meaning, geez, I'm struggling with getting help. I mean, today, lots of people are struggling getting help. I mean, I want them to create that will usually for me I'll get a question, what do you mean? How can you help? What is it you do? Well, I've worked with a number of companies in a variety of issues. They always usually involve revenue generation or profitability. Anything in those areas where, then they'll go. And if they don't go, to Tom's point, I haven't done a good job of introducing myself, of beginning the process of gaining favorable attention. But what I do discover most of the time, the how can I help just begins to lead into getting it out there. Now, Mike, I know you might be sensitive because I never qualify what I can do. Okay, now that may be right or wrong, but I live in the space that I can help. Now, what I mean by that is if somebody's looking for a great IT person, they're really struggling with their IT. Well, I can't help with that, but I can. I have lots of people that I can refer them to for IT work. If I mean, many times I'm working with somebody very small that talks about just not having enough information. I'll ask them, do you have a bookkeeper? Are you working with some kind of a, QuickBooks, something like that. And if that's and by the way, with a lot of small people, that's an issue. And I always have 3 or 4 bookkeepers that I can refer. So I can help in anything, but I want them to begin telling me where their issues are. Now, does anybody want to comment or question on what I said? Argue with me, whatever. Jacqueline, you have to unmute because I want to hear just something that you want to say to me. Nothing.
I would not argue with you. I agree. On board.
You're on board. Okay. Jim, anything?
I mean, I guess my thought is, Arnold, that there are different approaches, obviously, for different situations, I think, and that if I am soliciting a vice president of human resources, as an example,
Right.
I've sent them an introductory letter. I've been able to get a phone call and an appointment scheduled. I think I'm in a place where I guess what I'm thinking, and I haven't been in sales for years, Arnold, so feel free to just throw me under the bus, but I'm thinking that as I'm starting that conversation, there's a discovery process between the two of us, right? I'm trying to understand what their challenges are. I know they face issues with hiring. I know they face issues with sales. And having an opening like, there's a difficult world out there today. We're all struggling through, the hiring and, creating the revenue streams and that kind of thing. Are these the challenges that you're facing? I mean, I don't know. And I'm just throwing that out, Arnold. As versus, what can I do for you? Because I think, when I say, what can I do for you? I've kind of said, well, thank you for making the call. Thank you for taking the time. What can I do for you? Well, I haven't got there yet. I don't know that I've earned that right to ask that question.
Well, you see, again, and that's certainly okay. But I really want to begin them. How can I put this? I'm changing my name because I much prefer Arnie to Arnold. My mother would call me Arnold, and my wife when she's angry at me. So that's why I put in Arnie. She normally calls me Arnie when she's not angry at me. Okay. Right. And so that's fine. I mean, certainly if that works for you. And again, I don't work with a lot of employees, and an HR person is an employee because the person that's going to hire me is almost always either the owner, or I don't work with a lot of public companies, but even larger companies, the person that's going to hire me is an owner. And so that's why I want the how can I help to be very broad. And I'm not focusing on a specific area. But in the cases where I have met others, I still ask, how can I help? And then they will narrow me down. Well, what areas do you work in? A variety of areas. What seems to be an issue that you might have? And so I still want, it's no different than you want to sell me a car. How much do you want? Well, what are you willing to pay? No, I want to know what you want, because otherwise I need to narrow it. And I don't mean to, if the metaphor doesn't work for you, it's okay. I want somebody else to begin framing what the issue is. And so that's why I use the generic. George, anything you'd comment on that about?
I guess for the last 26 or 27 years, I've been following the way you do things. And I guess the thing that I thought of is that, like you, a lot of people come to me now because someone else referred them to me. So I had one this morning where a guy said that he wanted to talk. He'd be referred to me by Nate, and that could we talk? And so we set a time, and when I talked with him, I said, I understand you're dealing with some challenges in your family business. What would you like us to talk about today? So I
Same
think I
difference.
started with how's the asparagus season this year? So, because I knew he was a packing company, and then went into that, and he just went into the conversation. That
Oh,
was relative.
all very reasonable, right? You've got
Mhm.
I had a referral yesterday also, or 3 days ago, had a referral, same kind of conversation.
Right.
I'm thinking, Arnie, and George, honestly, more along the lines of I'm trying to create a relationship with somebody I don't know. That's all I was kind
Well,
of.
see, now strangely enough,
Talked to, it's not been referred to me, right? It's more of that first call. I'm trying to reach into their environment and dig something out of them versus them coming to me and saying, hey, I heard about you, or I need your help. And I like the concept, so I'm trying to get sold, Arnie.
well, as I go deeper into this, if you get that I want to help you, do you like me better or do you like me less? Okay. Anybody want to respond to that? I mean, let's.
Well,
What do you think? You think you like me better if you get that I want to help you?
So, but it's hard to discern, Arnie, because if you say, how can I help?
Yes.
I'm going to either think he's trying to help me or he's trying to sell me. And if
I'm
you're trying to sell me, if you're trying to sell me, I like you less.
Well,
It's that
that's
simple.
exactly right. Now, I believe, I mean, anybody that's known me for a long time, when we talk about purpose and stuff like that, it's to help others. And at this time in my existence, I'm doing a whole lot more pro bono work than I have. But I've always not ruled people out because they couldn't pay what I wanted my going rate to be, but I could help them and we'd work something out. Now I'm wearing a t-shirt from somebody that says talk hiring. I met this 26-year-old guy 4 years ago at a Jewish business network. Okay, he was right out of college, well, a little bit out of college, I guess he had a master's, and he was starting a business. And I just began working with him. And then a year in, he says, I got to find a way to pay you because it was valuable. And now he is a full boat client because he's got a business approaching $500,000 and it's transformative and it's terrific. I mean, so that when I say, how can I help? I mean it.
But Arnie, how do I know if I'm the guy you just met in a networking event? How do I know that you mean it and you're not just a really good con man? How do I know that?
Mike, you are a highly skeptical human. Okay.
I think I represent probably at least 70% of the people out there.
That hasn't been my experience. Well, but why? It's not fair. that maybe there's a self-selected people that I know. But the point being is what I need is if somebody comes to know me and we meet a second time. And so my goal is to get somebody, and those of you that know me know that my first sale is usually a 4-meeting contract. And I used to give presentations on this, getting paid for fact finding, because in that 4-meeting time, they would come to know me, and then we would move into a developmental process if it was appropriate, coaching, one-on-one if it's appropriate, with people if it's appropriate, planning if it's appropriate. But in that form, and each meeting is 2 hours. And Zoom, it's an hour and a half. In person, it was 2 hours. And at the end of that time, I'd be paid because that would have been the deal. And so what we would do, the way I'd get into it is because of the how can I help, we'd get into some pretty heavy issues quickly. Now, now comes for me a skill that I learned. I don't want to fix. I'm asking, how can I help? I'm uncovering issues. And I have to be and again, because I've been doing this a long time, and before that, I did a whole lot of other things a long time, I always have a sense that I know what to do. And I have to be very careful of not doing stuff, of just listening and asking questions and listening. The notes I made to myself: listen, 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 and ask questions from what I'm learning. then when they'll give me something, well, this is working this way. Well, how's that working out? Or how come that is? And after doing that for a while, I have found somebody said, this is great. How can I work with you? I mean, I know that sounds foolish, but when I focus on uncovering issues, asking, what have you done? How has that worked? And when they come, I keep saying, don't try to fix. It's just keep digging, keep asking, forcing them to think, forcing them to self-identify, which is the issues. And if somebody wants to try me on this with issues they've been having, just to see some of the mechanisms that how that might work, I'm open to that. Anybody? Role
Well,
play. Go, Jacqueline. Yes.
I just had a comment on what you and Mike were discussing of how does it come across, the how can I help? And my thought is, if you're established, this is an established prospect, that the how
Well-
can I help
Well, if it's an
is-
established process, you're way past that.
a prospect.
Yeah, if it's an established person that there's a relationship, we've done this in the past. That's what I mean. But when you say an established prospect, what do you mean?
I mean, what you were talking about, they are the decision maker.
Oh, I
they
see.
have the
Okay. So they
pay.
qualify as a
They
prospect.
qualify.
Yes,
I feel
okay.
like if you got to the point that they're qualified, that they're there to make a purchasing decision, and you say, how can I help? And you spend time in the discovery, it's good.
Well, I've never found anybody that wanted to make a purchasing decision without having a much deeper dialogue.
Right.
And so what I'm talking about is the dialogue prior to making the purchasing decision.
As am I.
So my question to you is, what kind of, when I say what kind of people, I don't mean it that way. What are you selling, Jacqueline? What are you offering to somebody?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I'm offering engagement services for
In-
employee engagement.
When you say,
So,
did you say,
so if you are a leader of an organization and you want to increase your team's performance
right?
through having a highly engaged team, whether that's inter-team relations, employee leader exchange.
Somehow, I don't know, maybe there's an echo from.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I had my hearing aid and I had my headphone on, and maybe there's just too much sound. So say it again, what you're selling?
So I am very deeply rooted in the engagement area, employee engagement services,
So what's the outcome of what you're selling?
profit.
So higher profits.
Yes.
So if they're speaking to you, do they believe they have an opportunity to do better in their profit performance?
There's always an opportunity to do better.
Well, that would be my thought. And
Yeah.
so you want to uncover that they believe that they have opportunity there.
Right.
And so how would you further that discussion?
Well, I think that when I have a prospect in front of me, they usually have a pain point. They're usually seeking me because there's a pain point in something on their team. And that was the point that I was making an effort to make, is that.
So most of the time, somebody is seeking you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How did they find you?
Through speaking engagements, word of mouth, networking events.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what kinds of fact finding do you do to get them to hire you?
A lot of it is like what you're saying, the how can I help question, what are you experiencing? And really it's a consultation session of
Right.
here's what I'm seeing now, here's the ideal, and what can be implemented to fix. Some clients are willing to share data, some not up front.
Okay. So when do you ever take an assignment when they haven't shared data?
with an agreement that they, that's part of my process, is that
So-
the,
So that when you hire me, you will share data.
oh, yes.
Okay. So have you gotten somebody to agree to hire you prior to sharing data?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So when they hire you, obviously they're going to share data. So what has made the decision for them to hire you?
What has led them to their decision?
To hire you? And by the way, this is for everybody. It's not just
Yeah.
for Jacqueline. It's specific to what she's selling, but it's for everybody, exactly the same.
And the need and the outcome.
Can you
is
handle
what I
that pressure, Jacqueline? This is for everybody.
Yeah. It's all good. The need and the outcome. Here's my pain point. I need help. This is the outcome I'm seeking, and I need an expert to help with that process to get there.
So how do you ask the question that they say, yes, I'll hire you?
I make a proposal. I say, I take that discovery conversation and I capture all of the points, all of their pain points, and whatever data I can gather of here's our turnover and here's what that is costing us. And I turn that into the proposal. And, if we could increase X amount through this process, here's what the outcome can be. Anytime I can attach numbers to a proposal that I pulled out of the discovery, I do.
Good.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I mean, what I'll tend to do, it's similar to yours, but I may say, if I can do this, this, and this for you, what would you want to do? What would you be willing to do? Now, if the outcome is to hire you, then we haven't had an honest conversation. If we've had an honest conversation, and I say, if I can deliver to you that which you said you needed, using your word as a pain point, what would you want to do? And if the answer is, well, I'd hire you, because if you could do this for me, I'd hire you. And when would you want to start? And that's when I get, well, what is it going to cost or whatever? And I might say, what's the difference? Because if I'm going to do that for you and you're going to get that outcome, and whatever I'm going to charge you is reasonable to that outcome, what would prevent us from working together? I mean, so that what I'm doing is I want to use what they've said in the fact finding to turn that into, and what Jackie says is perfect, the proposal. Now, in the world that I work in, I'm working with an owner, I usually don't do a proposal. I mean, at some point they get a statement of work of what we're going to do. But in the 4-meeting contract that I do, that's usually not a formal proposal. It's, oh, so we'd speak together. Yeah. What's that look like? Well, we'd meet every week, 2 weeks, whatever, usually over 2 months. And at the end of that time, we can be happy we did this, or we can move on and solve some other issues. So for me, that usually is the formal proposal. Now, at the end of those 4 meetings, we're going to move somewhere, and that may be a more formal proposal. But for me, that's my form of fact finding. And that's why I use the term getting paid for fact finding. And the other reason I do that is it's very little. Let me ask another question, Jackie. Let me put it a different way. If somebody's going to pay me a number that will get lost in their income, I mean, this isn't going to change anybody's life to hire me to meet 4 times. And with it is always if you don't feel the meetings are a benefit to you, we don't have to meet 4 times. We just cancel your payment for the meetings we've had. So that I don't usually have to create a proposal. Now, knowing that in other worlds, there needs to be that. Tom, you and I have had that discussion, I think, a few times. But yet, what I do is try to take the basic is somebody needs to work with me to understand my value. And the way I have them come to understand my value is to offer something that is not of a high loss. For instance, I'm not charging $100,000 to meet with me 4 times. So if I'm working with a business, $4 to $5, $6 million, and I'm going to charge them $400 to $500 a meeting, they're not going to turn me down for the money. They may turn me down because I haven't demonstrated my value to them, and so they don't want to do that. But if we have this dialogue for a while, I'll usually be successful in having. And now, what I'm going to do in those meetings, I don't know. Now I will begin more definitely to try to discover what's keeping them from solving their problems. What is standing in their way is, and it may be with people, it may be it's people, strategy, execution, and cash. And so I'm dealing in those 4 areas to try to discover what the issues are. But in the fact finding, I need to uncover those things that I can, turn it back around. If I were able to help you solve those things, what would you want to do? And when would you want to start? So to me, it's moving it along, and the answers to those will show me what I haven't yet uncovered. Does that come clear, anybody? I need some feedback.
But it's all consistent, Arnie, with your don't fix. And I really like that.
Oh yeah, that's a major deal. It's
So-
when we
so-
try to fix stuff in the early meetings that we're on the wrong page.
A little aside, if you're ever working with people who deal with aggressive clients, there's a mantra that's part of a curriculum, and it's listen, agree, ask. Listen, agree, ask. Listen, agree, ask. It goes around and around and around.
Right.
And the person asking the questions controls the conversation, and you can take it wherever you want. And I think that's what you're
Absolutely.
saying.
As long as he who asks questions controls the conversation.
Yeah.
And
So
that
I
is
like what you're saying.
Yeah. And so that, I mean, this is where I've just got some of this stuff. As I used to, in my past life, I had customer relations people that worked in part of the organization that I was heading. And I would always say, when they had a disgruntled customer, you'd always say, what can we do to make this better? And then keep your mouth shut. Don't offer anything. What can we do? Most people will come up with very reasonable and, oh, great, we can do that. In fact, we can do a little better than that. Okay, great. And then you turn those around. And so that's what I learned about, let other people tell you. And that was the idea. Okay. Now, the other thing I put down a note to myself or to say is, if appropriate, prioritize. Now, Jacqueline, you'd said that you're there to help people grow profits. Ultimately, whenever I'm working with a company, it's grow revenue and grow profits. I mean, they go together. And often we give everything away, we can sell a lot of it, but then we go out of business because we're unprofitable. So usually it's something, it's together, and it's to understand that. The other thing I need to keep in my mind is the person I'm talking to has been living this for a long period of time. So if the solutions to the issues were easy, you wouldn't be there. So the solutions are not within their realm of sight. And so my job sometimes is to help them see that it's within their realm of sight. I don't know if I'm clear on that, but when I start to solve problems after listening for 10 minutes, I become irrelevant. And I know that. Now, I may be right because I'm old and I'm smart and all those other things, but I will be thrown out of an office, metaphorically, if I try to solve problems after being there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Continue asking questions is what I wrote down. And sometimes that's a skill. If I just keep saying how come all the time, I need to find out different ways to say how come, or something like, how has that worked for you? And if it works great, then I might say, well, what keeps you from doing that all the time? And then I'll get another issue. I'll get something. So, and I do this as long as I'm working with anybody. I will ask the question, what have you been doing? How's that been working? What other options might you have? And just staying within that realm. This is an obvious one, just another bullet point I wrote down as we were talking just as I was thinking about, no one cares about you. They care about what they do. What do they care about? And who wants to answer that question?
Me.
That's
Yep.
exactly, what can you do for me? What are you going to do for me? If I work with you, how will that benefit me? And so it really is to stay there. And then the other thing is, this is just technique. I try to keep it light. I had a meeting with somebody this morning. Totally, I mean, and was supposed to be a 45-minute meeting at an hour and 15 minutes. I just said, okay, I got to go to my next meeting, because this person was enjoying the meeting. And that is my goal. My goal is the person that I'm speaking with, I want to have fun. Even in the meetings, now you're paying me and we're going to try to hit some issues. I want them to look forward to that meeting. I want them to have gotten something from that meeting. And it always comes, I do say always, when I can ask questions that somebody will say, I've never looked at it that way. You know, and so that's the goal that I push, is to have somebody hackneyed, think outside the box. Is there other ways to have done it? How have others done it in your profession? What else is happening? Now, in today's world, I'll discover so many people are not taking advantage of technology. And so just by asking the question, or I mean, I can come up with so many stories where I had a company that was installing elevators, and they discovered, I mean, after a long time, that if the site wasn't ready, they wasted time and energy by sending the machinery that couldn't be installed, and that could be a problem, by sending teams of installers, that could be a problem. And so for a while, they discovered they had to go to every site, and this was all over the New York metro area. They had to go to every site to see whether the site was ready. These are 2 to 4 stop elevators. It wasn't huge high-rise buildings. When they discovered that they could take pictures with a cell phone and they could see stuff. I mean, it sounds stupid. One day I asked the question, are you guys taking pictures? You know, and a couple were, most weren't. And well, how about if we did that? Because the contractors would lie and said, yeah, it's ready, or the owners of the buildings with the properties, you know, people go take pictures. And if that didn't work, take another picture. And that was easy. And then, so that was a simple technology fix. And there were other things like that, where you're surprised, you think people are doing stuff. Billing, is your billing paperless? I mean, there's all kinds of ways to look at it. And Jacqueline, do people call you Jackie or Jacqueline? Jack, there we go.
I prefer Jacqueline. Thank you for asking.
That's good. I mean, I wasn't sure. I'm certain in your profitability things that oftentimes just the use of technology to help you find things better, cheaper, faster. And companies get set and they do things a certain way. And we would find that they're not using technology. Now, my line is you can continue doing what you're doing and you'll have what you have, or others that you compete with are using technology. So if you're not doing it, how come? Now, at that moment, if I'm dealing with an older client that doesn't want to change, I'll get fired. Or, I mean, I won't get fired in a bloody mess, but I won't get rehired because that person doesn't want to hear that they have to change. Now, I'm sensitive to that, and I don't get angry at people. As long as they want to keep paying me, I'll keep working with them. But what does happen if somebody doesn't want to change, it means that change is more painful to them than the problem they have. Now, that's true with all humans. Each of us has things about us we'd like to change. And most of the time, we've made the decision that the pain of not changing, the pain of changing is greater than the pain of not changing. Now, that may be short run. And so every alcoholic or drug addict probably knows that this behavior is self-destructive. But the pain of changing in the short term is greater than the long term. So I need to keep those things in my mind as I'm working with somebody. Anybody want to comment on that? Nothing? Okay. And then I go to, well, 4 in the sales process is presentation and 5 is gaining commitment. And so that I'm using the fact finding, obviously in my presentation, that whether I'm doing something without a formal proposal or I am doing a formal proposal, it must be based on what I have discovered in my fact finding. So I need to discover, my proposal has to address what I've discovered. And if possible, as Jacqueline said, there needs to be dollars involved in it that makes sense to hire me. But if I'm doing it without a proposal, as I said to you, I would ask the question, if I could do that for you, and this would be the benefit, what would you want to do? And I go back to, I must get the answer, I'd hire you, and I'd start now. Now, do I get that all up? Of course not. But what I'm saying, then I have someplace to go. You know, if I could do it, why wouldn't you want to hire me? And then I want to hear what they have to say. And why wouldn't you want to start today? And I want to hear what they have to say. So it's moving it along in that way. Then the last note I had for myself was start small and do more. In the words of Jim Godshell, for those of us that remember Jim, is come in any window, you know, anywhere where you can get in the house and then wander through the house. That was his metaphor. And I always thought it was brilliant. And so that's why I wanted to get hired for my 4 meetings. You know, not going to cost somebody an arm and a leg to pay me $2,000 to meet 4 times over 2 months. And that they will get great benefit from that. And if they feel they're not, go meet with me the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th time. Now, I said a lot of stuff in the 15 minutes that we've been talking. Give me some feedback.
I'll go first. Arnie, thank you very much. I have to get ready for another meeting. And so I'm going to excuse myself, but I really appreciate you doing this.
Mike, I hope there's some benefit. But that wasn't quite what I was looking for. You know, that's nice. Thank you.
Just here, thank you, Arnie.
I know, I wasn't asking for that. I was asking, challenge, come back, argue with me. But that's okay.
No, I already did that. Bye.
So long, Mike. Anybody else?
Hey, I do a different approach, and I learned it from you.
Uh-oh.
After that second step of gaining favorable attention, and you did this one in Tampa, and I've quoted it many times. What I say is, okay, enough about me. And I do keep mine to 3 minutes, not 22 like Brown, but what I say is, what goal? What's your key goal? So I go through goals and then challenges. And so my fact finding is I ask for 3 to 5 goals and I listen, just as you were saying, I do all the listening and tell me more about that. So I get 3 to 5 goals and I get 3 to 5 challenges. And generally that's what I will put. I do come back with a presentation. So steps 4 and 5 were on one piece of paper for me. And I use their key goals and challenges. So it is their facts to get back to them. And then if I can solve a problem in strategic planning, sales training, or leadership training, coaching. So it's a different approach. So I have to think through this. How can I help and how can I add in there? Because I get all kinds of information back on discovering wants and needs when you ask people about this. And the reason I give them the background is they know I know how to do a whole bunch of stuff like you. So then they're willing to talk about goals. I've never had a stop point. And the other point I'll make is when I want to go back to when to get more facts, that's when I use Garco Carco.
Right.
That's when I use that part.
Tom, we're doing the same thing with just a different style.
I know, but it was your style in Tampa, which I found and I adopted, and it's worked very well for me.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's been probably 38 years ago since we did that in Tampa.
Yeah, I was gonna, how many years ago has that been?
Wait a minute. No, it was like 10 years ago.
But anyway, Jim, anything that you know?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, I love your 4 meetings for $2,000 program. So my question to you on that is, you say that's where you do your fact finding and you kind of figure out what the customer really needs and those.
Oh yeah. I mean, to me, that's when I can. Okay, now I know who you are and what you do.
Fantastic, right? So, if I thought somebody would pay me $500 a session to do fact finding, that'd be great. My question to you is, let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
How long have you been doing this?
I joined the network in 1995. And I was a consultant for a year or two before that.
Are the majority of the people that you work with referred to you at this point?
Wait, say it again.
Are the majority of the people that you work with referrals?
Yes and no. Yeah, I mean, it's moved from total nothing to it's still. And again, I've slowed down.
People that come to you know who you are. You have a reputation. Is that?
Yeah, but
because I'm trying to figure out why.
Listen, I'm also in the New York metro area, where there's only 22 million people in my 50-mile radius, and now that I'm on Zoom, I'm meeting people from all over the country.
I'm just trying to understand how you move people from a fresh prospect to meet with me 4 times so I can uncover your needs for $2,000. I mean, well,
it doesn't quite. What it really is when I know I've scored.
What?
Is when I know I've scored, when I know I'm doing something right, is I speak to most of the time. Somebody says, "How much time do we need for the meeting?" I said, "I'll book an hour, but if you want to get off after half an hour, that's fine." And most of my meetings now are Zoom. I mean, that's just. I'm not meeting in person with anybody, and I because I love that. I don't want to get dressed. I like wearing my t-shirt and jeans, and so that I'll talk to somebody. And let me go back to 2000 when I was meeting in person and driving to it. So now I may be down as much as $300 a meeting on Zoom. So that was the range. But what I'm really looking to do is have somebody say, "This was very useful. I'm glad we spoke. What's the next step?" And then I will give them a choice. I can create some processes that we can do, but I think it would be more useful for us just to speak together a few times for an hour and a half of Zoom or 2 hours if it's face to face. And you may get some benefit of that, and that may solve a lot of the issues that we have, or I'll just get to know more about you. And most of them will say, "Great, what's going to cost me?" And I'll tell them what's going to cost them. And, when you want to start. I mean, and it's that simple. I'm not doing a proposal. I'm not doing anything else. And some of you, "Well, what are you going to get out of that?" I'll say, "I don't know. Not sure yet." And then I will give somebody that they have full right. If they don't, I said, "Was this valuable?" They said, "Yeah, this discussion was terrific." I said, "Okay, my sense is you'll find every discussion we have will be that." But the safety factor for you, and I freely state, I will give you an invoice for 4 meetings only because I'm lazy. I want to do an invoice for every meeting. But that invoice is not a contract. If we meet once and you don't want to meet again, terrific. Pay me for the one time, which will be 25% of the invoice, and that's it. And so I'm kind of loose about that. Now, if I'm working with a big public company, obviously I have to be a little different. But I've had some decent sized clients that's worked fine. Then at the end of those meetings, they'll tell me, "I've got people that I'd like you to do this with. What else do you do?" And you get into testing, you get into leadership development, if it's appropriate, sales development, if it's planning, and you move into that. But now they know me. They have a sense of who I am, and I'm not getting challenged on stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, I just struggle through a process like this of having people.
But Jim, I want to say one other thing that just came to me. My hourly meeting rate when I started was like $150. I mean, this was 25 years ago, things were different, but yet as I've gotten more confidence and done it more, my numbers go up. I mean, they have. I mean, it's just,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
so. Anybody else have a pushback? George, anything?
I agree.
Say it again.
Everything.
Oh.
Very helpful, Arnie. Very, very helpful. To hear your thoughts and how you go about it, and especially how you have perfected it over the years.
You've been listening to this a long time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's been a while. So very, very helpful. It brought out some points that I tend to gloss over and not pay enough attention to. So I found that to be very, very productive.
Great. Jacqueline, anything that push back on anything? Jack, what are you in? Where are you physically? I mean, what part of the country?
Minneapolis.
Really? Okay. I tend to listen to Al Franken a lot from Minneapolis. He's the senator, Al Franken. Okay, who's no longer the senator because he got pushed out of the Senate, but he does podcasts and he does stuff like that. So he's from Minneapolis, and my family was all from Minneapolis, but they moved out 2 years before I was born, so I wasn't born there. But I grew up having relatives that we would go back to Minneapolis. It's a wonderful place to be, other than it's cold, I think we're done, unless anybody has anything. And as Wendy could tell you, if anybody ever wants to reach out and ask a question, I love to talk to people.
Thank you, Arnie. Good meeting.
Thank you, Arnie. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Okay, have a
Very
great
good this afternoon.
evening. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.